I am unashamed. What about you?
Welcome back to Unashamed. Jase, on the last podcast, you told us about your travels during our little time off. And so while you were in the great state of Colorado
and Pennsylvania,
I did the opposite of what you did. I did an event first in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. No, I flew into Cedar Falls, Iowa, which the Cedar River, by the way, is very rapid and has falls, which is why they call it that, which surprised me. I didn't know they had that up in Iowa. But it was a beautiful place. The weather was fantastic. It was so cool and nice. And I did this event, and the young man came up to me and said, "I'm so glad you mentioned this on the podcast because I drove like 2 hours from Davenport, Iowa, just to meet you, which was really cool, which is why we talk about our events."
Did you or Lisa bring a black iron skillet?
We did not. But I will say this, when you were telling the story last time, it made me think we have gone and bought black iron skillets and then just left them before.
You know what I actually did after that? I moved a black cast iron skillet up to the three things I would take on a deserted island if I was trapped there.
Because you can cook it on an open flame and it does great.
Oh, it does fantastic.
That's exactly right. That's pretty good. So, Jase, we went from Iowa straight to Ireland.
Oh, wow.
The country of Ireland. I'd never been before.
Is that why you're donning the shirt?
I am. This was a souvenir shirt that Lisa bought for me, so I'm wearing my Irish shirt today. So now I have a shirt to wear on St. Patrick's Day, I guess it's green. But I'd never been. I've been to Scotland because we filmed over there for the Duck Show, and then I've been to England 2 or 3 times, but I'd never been to Ireland. I always wanted to go. And it was really interesting because, we wound up, when we first got there, it's really interesting because I drove all over Ireland on the left side of the road, which, just think about that for a minute. I've done it a little bit in the Bahamas, but there's one road in Bahamas. But this is big cities, the wrong, from our perspective, the wrong side of the road. So the fact that I did it for 1 week and didn't wreck the car, I never hit anybody.
Oh, and you drove on the wrong side?
I drove on the wrong side for a week, Jase, all over this place.
Could you understand the accent? Because they speak English, but it's
difficult. It is difficult. It is English, but it's definitely its own brand. And so I struggled with it. But we have some friends that from L.A. that are film producers. They've been on the podcast before, Ann and Phelim, and they're Irish, so they live there 6 weeks in the summer. And so we stayed at their house. So here's what's interesting. So we wound up in Dublin the last couple of days, and it's very touristy, and it just, it's a nice place, but it was a big city with a bunch of bars in it. It kind of reminded me of going to New Orleans or something like that. Yeah. So that wasn't really the highlight of my trip. The highlight, we were up in the northern part of Ireland with Ann and Phelim, and I felt like we just kind of lived a week or 5 days of being Irish people. We went into people's homes. We met people, friends of theirs. We went into a couple of the pubs they have there, and they're really interesting because they're kind of just gathering places for them. Really interesting. And we got to, probably the highlight of the thing for me was we got to go in a castle, which was there in Mullaghmore, which is where their house is. And but they just said we're going to go to this castle. In your mind, when you hear the word castle, you're thinking like something you'd see on TV with the, huge areas and I don't know, where Batman would live or something. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. I had these things in my mind. Well, we go in there. It's just a person lived there. It was just it was big and high ceilings and stuff, but it was just they had a fire going, and so we went in, and she served us something to drink in the drawing room. We sat and visited. They were telling us about the history of the place. And then she takes us in the dining room. And this is a big, fancy dining room. And we go in there, and we have Irish coffee and cake, after that. Yeah. And then she gave us a little tour of the place. But it was just stuff like that. It was really interesting. One night we went and saw a play that was done by a local troupe of Irish actors. And it was a famous Irish play called The Field. There's been a movie made about it, which I'm going to watch now. But it was really interesting. So you were talking about the accent. I'm watching this play, and I'm getting about every third word.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm listening in a foreign language. But, I learned a lot about the Irish people because they've had a lot of war, a lot of civil war over there, a lot of war with the Brits. And so it was very interesting to sort of get into their mindset. And they're all very intrigued and interested in American politics. And most of the questions they asked me were about Trump, which was interesting because they can't quite figure him out, So they,
yeah.
I was like, well, good luck with that. I started to call Zach since he worked for him at one point. But
now, did you speak over there, or
I didn't speak. No, we just we were just tourists. Like we were just the ones from America.
Let's go to Ireland.
Yeah, well, our friends were there and they've been inviting us, so we were like, okay, we're gonna go.
I know you're my brother, but you just do some weird things. Let's
just goes to Ireland.
I just go to Ireland. I spent 5 days there. It's on the Irish coast though, up north. That's
a hard 5 days. That's a lot of
Oh yeah, it's and I had to break the Benjamin Franklin rule because we were staying with our friends for 5 days, and Benjamin Franklin said guests are like fish; they stink after 3 days.
Yeah,
and I broke the rule, but we had a great time. When they lay out a spread every morning for breakfast, it's not always like what we would have. It would be like some smoked salmon and meats and cheeses and stuff.
One of my favorite people on the planet is Jim McGuigan. You remember he was a preacher back in the day.
I wondered where he would. Do you know what town
he was from? Northern Ireland,
which is where I was at.
We used to tell stories, but when I first would hear him speak, I couldn't understand.
It's so hard.
Half of what he said, but he really taught me at a young age that the Bible's about a person.
Yeah.
That little jingle I use in a lot of my speeches, where from Genesis to Malachi, is about Jesus coming.
Yeah.
And Matthew to John, Jesus is here. And Acts to the Revelation, Jesus is coming back. I got that from him. But it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, this is about a person. And so we later on in life, and he's still alive, although he's up in year. I think he's around 90. But we got to be good friends, in the Lord. So, and mainly digitally.
I would love, and I don't know now that I could have that conversation with Jim, but I would love, now that I've been to Ireland, I would love to ask him questions, because when we would talk about spiritual things, it was interesting because they most of the people I was talking to, they were viewing things through the prism of just religious battle, between the Protestants and Catholics.
The heritage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they don't really it's hard to find common ground to just have a conversation.
Isn't it crazy that we're talking about this, and then at the root of this is love, attaching it to God's will, and him showing his disciples the full extent of his love. And then you have people who come out of that background where all they know about religion is fights and war and conflict. I mean, there's been a lot of bad things done in the name of religion and Christ, and
it was really interesting because we went to 2 or 3 pubs and these are all in the town. This is kind of the local place. And then, so Phelim, the last night we were there in his area, took me to an IRA pub, this was Irish Republican Army. So this is like the other side of the issue. And so it was really interesting when you walk in there. He said, you're going to hear some Irish rebel songs tonight. And we went in, sure enough, this guy's singing all these old songs to them. I mean, they were new to me, about their troubles and their fights and all the different things. And on the wall, there were all these pictures of these martyrs from their movement. And I was fascinated by it because, we have our own issues in America. We've had a civil war. We've had a lot of stuff going on. But it was when you go into another culture and you learn about these things, especially that the backdrop of so much of it was religious stuff. It was very intriguing to me to be a part of that.
Boy, I had something happen to me in the airport that just infuriated me. I don't know why. When you told that story, I thought, because it's hard for us to get along with people. I couldn't find my earphones, and I'm going on a trip for a week, and I love listening to sermons, worship music. I like those earphones. Couldn't find them. So I thought, well, I'll just buy some. So the first place we stopped in Dallas, I said, well, I'll just go in here. First little pub, where I could buy something, which I knew I was going to pay way too much for them. Well, I didn't understand the concept of Bluetooth earphones. I get that from my dad, I guess.
So if you're tired of health insurance companies eating away at your paycheck and your sanity, it's time for a change. Christian Healthcare Ministries is a biblical alternative to traditional health insurance at just half the cost. It lets you save money on health expenses while being true to your faith. CHM is a ministry first. That means fellow believers chip in each month to help pay each other's eligible medical bills. And because they aren't insurance, you're not restricted to a small number of doctors and hospitals. You can actually pick the care that you want with no middleman needed. Plus, CHM members and staff pray for you when you need it most. You get your financial and spiritual support, whatever stage of life that you're in. See why Christians across the country are ditching health insurance for good and stopped paying into a broken system. Learn more today by visiting chministries.org/unashamed. That's chministries.org/unashamed.
And so
You're a low tech man, Jase.
yeah, I go up over on the wall and it's like wireless because I always I have a little adapter, I plug them into my phone or I plug it into my computer. Well, it said wireless and I thought, is this going to be too much trouble? And well, there's a sign on the board with all these earphones that says, please ask an attendant for help. It's the biggest sign on the wall. Well, right at my feet, there's a woman who obviously works there who she's stocking shelves. And I see a stack of these earphones. She's putting them up. I said, ma'am, can you help me? Because I'm wondering whether if I buy this that I have the capabilities, or give me a little tutorial on if I need wireless earphones. I was wondering how that works. I mean, or does a wire come with it? I'm comfortable with the wire, so it's like that selling point because it's like wire. Everything said wireless. Well, she just looked at me, said nothing, and went back to doing what she was doing. And I said, do you work here? And she looked back up, nothing. I thought, well, I know she's hearing me. She's 2 feet from me. And so I said,
Did she have earbuds in?
No, but I thought, well, what would you do? I need help. It said there's a sign in this store that says, please ask attendant.
Don't do it on your own.
Assistance. And so I said, I need assistance. She looks up at me again. So when she looked the third time, I thought, maybe she doesn't speak English.
Oh, boy.
And she shook her head no. So Missy is over at the little rail because she didn't come in the store, but it's an open rail. And I walk over and she said, what are you doing? And I was like, there's a sign. I tell her the whole story. And she's like, babe, buy them. They will be fine. I will help you through it. I said, okay. So I go over there, grab the box. Well, when I grab the box, same woman, she hasn't moved. She looks up at me and she moves to the checkout because now I have a box. And so I handed the box, wasn't a problem. She scanned it. I look at the
one language everybody understands.
She doesn't say a word. And then look, in the clearest English you've ever heard, she said, would you like a receipt? Well, I looked over at Missy.
She faked the no English.
And I said, is that the only English phrase you know? And she said, no, I speak perfect English. I said, well, what happened over there a while ago? She said, would you like a receipt? She wouldn't. I was like, why did you
you
ignore
offended
me?
her. Yeah.
Well, I guess I offended her, but I thought I was a victim of facial profiling. So I just couldn't help it. I couldn't let it go. I said, that sign said, ask attendant. That's the only reason I asked you. And she said, would you like a receipt? And I said, well, on the box. And so I said, well, I went to open the box. She said, you can't open that box. And I was like, why not? And there was a sign right beside the one that says, please see attendant, that says, do not open box. So then I said, well, why would I need a receipt? Because if I can't open the box before I leave the store. Because she said, and there's a no return policy. She threw that in there. I said, so let me get this right. I can't return it. I can't open it to see if there's actually a
So if you get outside and it's empty, then you're just out.
So I said, well, I got a question. Why would I need a receipt? She said, that's actually a valid point. I said, well, I don't think I want the receipt. So in that moment, I was so infuriated that I thought, you know what? Jesus was about conversations. And I said, have you ever read the story of the Tower of Babel? And she said, I have no idea what that means. I said, it's strange. It's how we got the different languages. I said, but fortunately, the creator of the universe came to this earth to let us speak one language that we could understand. She just had the strangest look. I said, check it out. Read the book of John. It's in the Bible.
She had the strangest look, Al.
Oh yeah. So
that was the conversation.
That's the
She
reason
was having a strange encounter,
That's the reason
too,
I
though.
told my story though, Zach, is because I drove all over another country on the wrong side of the road without incident. Jase can't make it through one airport without having a complete meltdown with a woman.
No, I didn't have a meltdown.
But I'm impressed that
I
you
brought up Jesus, and I
mean,
thought,
hey.
I was so angry, and I don't get angry. But I'm angry now just thinking about it.
I saw you get angry when I yawned in one of your dissertations.
I
the
was
other day.
angry then.
I did. I mean, you mentioned it 4 times after I did it too, so I knew. That's the first time I've got under Jason's skin that I knew
in a
about.
rabbit hole of understanding.
I thought, boy, this is good.
He looks up for Zach to be following along closely, and Zach's like,
That's what he did.
Oh, he brought it up 4 times, and then we had another kind of. I say a good catch up talk, and you brought it up again. You said, "Now one other thing."
Catch up talk, Zach. To your credit, you apologize for yawning. I think, Maddie, did you edit that out of the podcast when I looked at you and said, "Did he just yawn?" She edited that out. Look, 99.9% of our podcast is non-edited. I will say that, but
We'll try to find it and put it back in so you guys
I
can
think it
see
should become a meme that when I chase a rabbit hole that Zach finds boring, we should just interject that. You can push that button.
So I will say one thing about the power of the human mind. You can trick yourself into driving on the wrong side. But as soon as I landed in Pensacola, Florida, I got in my truck, I pulled out of the parking thing, and I went into the left lane. Some woman is heading right for me.
quick.
And I'm like, oh no, I'm not in Ireland anymore. So it was the only time.
Well, I went
did
to a
it.
foreign country too during
Where'd
the
you
break.
go?
I went to Arkansas, and it was. Look, let me tell
Maddie
you.
gave a look.
Oh, you should see the
that
look you
she's
got from Maddie.
Arkansas, and
She
She
all
looks like Jase
Hey.
did when you yawned when you just said that.
Well, I'm talking about parts unknown. I mean, it was. I went to school in Arkansas. I went to the same school that Maddie went to.
I know.
But we left our little mountain town, which is known for their summer camps, and drove 15 hours to the mountains to go to a summer camp, which was for the children's home that Jill serves on the board at. And we were out there for 4 or 5 days. But, man, you talking about in the middle of nowhere. You get up into parts of the Ozark Mountains, and it's a different world for sure.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? We all left to crazy places, and we were just trying to beat the heat. But
Well, and look, by the way, we wore jackets the whole time.
Yeah.
It was
No, we were hot. We were hot where we were at. But I'm gonna tell you something. You want to talk about an unknown secret? I'm about to tell the world. But you get up into parts of the Ozark Mountains, and there's like no development, but it is some of the most beautiful part of the country that you'll
it's
ever see.
fantastic. Yeah,
I mean, it's incredible.
I love it up there. All right, so we're back from our travels. We thought we'd regale you with some stories. Of course, nothing. Jase is always going to have some crazy story. So,
well, I mean, you can't make that up.
yeah.
But look, it put my faith to the test. That was a faith test, and that could have gone awfully wrong.
I'm wondering why she just ignored your first 2
Just
questions.
ignore me.
Yeah,
Well, I think she was busy.
yeah.
And she was, but I'm like, these airports, I know we got to move on, but this stuff is so overpriced.
Oh yeah.
And you would think if somebody's going to buy I spent $55 for those earphones, and I figured it out, but it's way more complex than the ones I had. I'd rather just plug it in.
Right.
I'm like, they should be, if a human being walks in there and says, yeah, I'm going to buy some of those and you're getting paid for this, you should roll out a red carpet, play a band music, or some kind of soothing music. Mm-hmm. And you know what was really bad is when we came back home and I landed right before my 6-hour nap because I'd had no sleep. I walked through the bedroom and I looked over on the cat there. We have a little love seat in our bedroom for some unknown reason, and that we never sit on. And there was my earphones, the ones I couldn't find, just out like with light shining. Here they were the whole time. And I thought,
what's funny is I lost mine too right before this trip, but I've never found mine.
I thought there was a purpose for this, Al, but I'm really struggling with what that was. But it was a test, and
well, I will say one thing, because I spent a lot of time in airports, and I would say and I wouldn't say this about every single person, but I would say the common theme is most people that work at an airport in a store or a restaurant act like they do not want to be there.
Yeah, they do. And
so that is common.
Would you want to be there?
No, I wouldn't. I mean,
but it is a travesty that should be changed.
So I'm neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but there are 3 things I know about your dog, Jase. You love them like family. They're your most loyal friend. And sadly, your dog won't live as long as you'd like them to.
I'm going to add a 4th thing.
What is it?
Because I just tried this product for my 2 little bitty dogs, the Vita Smart. I sprinkled this little green dust on their food. And the 4th thing, it caused a little dog booty shake. After they ate it the first time, I came in there with this bag and they both started shaking their booties. And I thought, well, they must like it.
They're very happy when they shake their booty. Unfortunately, 50% of all dogs over the age of 10 die from cancer. The leading cause of that cancer is the food that they've been fed. While naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, founder of Rough Greens, who Zach and I met, can't promise to keep your dogs from passing away, he does promise to make them happier and healthier while they're here. Rough Greens is full of the live nutrients that your pup needs to fight off skin, joint, and digestive problems, and yes, even cancer. With live vitamins, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, and antioxidants, Rough Greens has all the live nutrition your pup needs to stay happy and healthy. That's why it's America's #1 dog supplement. Jase's little dogs are enjoying it. My dogs love it as well. So here's what you do. Fetch a free Jumpstart trial bag for your dog today. Just cover shipping and see the difference live nutrition can make in your dog. Try it before you buy it. Go to roughgreens.com. Use the discount code Unashamed. That's RUFFgreens.com. Discount code Unashamed.
I'm going to attempt to make a segue here.
All right, I'm going to see this segue.
Well, because I think when we did a whole podcast without the stories, I guess, about what I noticed a connection with why Jesus came, why God the Father sent him, and understanding that what his will is.
Yeah.
Why did he do that? I think it's a good question. And it came from, we're making a list of questions in John. And this one in John 13,
Verse 12.
Which
the way I outlined, John, this kicks off another little section. The first one was like him washing their feet and then them not quite understanding. And then he's now going to take it to this next level, and he begins with this
He
question.
does, and that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And I reference John 7 and verse 16 and 17 because it says, my teaching is not my own if it comes from him who sent me. And then it says, if anyone chooses to do God's will. That phrase.
Yeah.
And so I did a rabbit hole every time it says that in the New Testament. And it says basically what Jesus says here. He will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. But in this case, when he asked, do you understand? There's so many passages that mirror that. And just the first one I think that pops in your head is Romans 12:1 and 2, when he says, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Mm-hmm. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Well, this next sentence, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And my point is, even like this silly airport story, I think a lot of Christians, they wake up every day they're trying to look for God's will in these little situations. Well, I wonder what God's will is in this situation. But when you read in the Bible, when he starts talking about God's will, it's connected to being like Jesus and Jesus revealing the will of God in what he did.
Yeah.
And in this case, John 13, he washed the disciples' feet saying, I'm leaving you an example that you should follow. And so I pointed out in Romans 13, when he goes through this loving your neighbor and he goes, talks about the commandments, but it's not what Jesus was introducing when he washed the disciples' feet is really a new definition of what it means to be holy. Because I think most people think being holy is not doing wrong. He did just the opposite. He's like, watch what I do for you. He washed their feet, even the guy that was fixing to betray him. And so I think that's what we've missed is we're thinking, oh, I want to be holy. That means I can't do anything wrong. No, being holy is offering your body as a living sacrifice, which was the image of what he was betraying and washing the feet that would lead him to a cross. And I find this interesting. You see the same language in 1 John 2, which is a very, it was something I had never noticed. So in 1 John 2:15, it says, do not love the world or anything in the world, which sounds a lot like Romans 12.
Yep.
It's like, don't conform to the pattern of the world, but be
Right.
transformed. Well, watch what this says. If anyone loves the world, when he starts talking about love, which the whole book of 1 John's about love,
Yep.
the love of the Father is not in him, which is why God came down in Jesus. He's showing that in John 13. And then it says, for everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, the lust of his eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away. But watch what this says. But the man who does the will of God lives forever. Well, why did Jesus come? John 10:10. He come that he may have life. Why is he showing them the full extent of why he came through washing the disciples' feet, which he then just point blank says, as I have loved you, you should love one another. I'm leaving you an example. And then he picks that up in John 15. Same
Yep.
vein, same line. Well, when you read 1 John from cover to cover, it has all the same elements in it. Like in John 2 and verse 6, whoever claims to live in him must walk as Jesus did. Well, Jesus did some walking, but he also did some kneeling and washed their feet. I mean, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
How that phrase keeps coming up with this idea of revealing God's love and his pursuit of us?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we brought out in the last podcast, is that's because God is love, another quote from 1 John 4.
Yep.
Therefore, his nature is always going to be revealed in this way, which is why Jesus becomes that personification of it, which is what we're talking about.
Well, I wanted to bring this up and see what y'all think if I can find my phone. So there's several new Christians that I have, I guess you would call them discipleship conversations with them. And this one I'd say he's been in about 3 months, and he read through John and he asked questions. And we went back and forth. He's like, where do I go next? I mean, this guy, we are studying every night. And he sends me texts at about the same time every night, about 11 o'clock. And then he's like, well, what's next? And that went on for weeks. I was like, well, read the book of Acts. He read the book of Acts. Questions, So he's like, where do I go next? I was like, why don't you go to 1 John? Because you read John, because that's what we're going to do.
Right.
And so he sent me a question based on 1 John, which is where he's at now. And I wanted to read it because when you brought that 1 John 4 up, I thought it was fascinating. So he asked me a question about 1 John 5:1, which is something I really never thought about. But he says, I'm kind of confused about what 1 John 5:1 means. And when I read that text, I thought, what does 1 John 5:1 say? So I went over here and read it. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. And everyone who loves the Father loves his child as well. So what is your initial, I'm like, here's a guy, he's 18 years old. He read that and he thought, what does that mean?
I mean, I would say the same thing we've been studying in John, that, I mean, if you believe Jesus is God and he is from God, then you love him the same, is what that would have been my initial reaction.
Yeah. So here's what I put, and y'all can jump in here. I put on 1 John 5:1, the whole overarching nature of God is love. Mm-hmm. Because you have 1 John 4:16 that you mentioned. It says, and so we know and rely on the love God has for us.
God is love.
God is love. He also says that in 4, 7, and 8.
Yep.
Dear friends, let us love one another. Well, this is the same phrase. For love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. In which we did this before, where what does it mean for us to know God? Well, what it means is when you try to get to know God, you realize, well, he's known you all along, and he knows you better than anyone else. And when you try to pursue God, when you find him, you're like, oh, he's been pursuing me all along. That's why Jesus came. So I kind of made that point, but I want to continue reading what I said. So I then put, the whole overarching nature of God is love. That is why I put this in parentheses. God in his nature, and I have to give Zach credit, I got a lot of this from him, is 3 distinct persons but one God. It points to the fact that God is love. And then I read 1 John 4:8 and 1 John 4:16 again, which we just read.
It's interesting that I was going to add a little caveat to that too, that so you hear the word believe, right? Anyone who believes that Jesus Christ has been born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves whoever has been born of him. So if you believe, then you're born of God. I think we wrongly interpret the word belief. We think that this is merely a mental assent, like almost like I have this acquisition in my cognition. I've acquired a certain belief that I believe that 2 + 2 is 4. I got that information. It's almost like it's just information that you've acquired. I don't think that's what it means, though. I think this is much more to your point of a relational belief. It's belief in God. It's trusting in. It's faith. It's and I actually believe God. I believe in him. I believe this is where I put my hope. It's not a mental, just simply a mental assent. It really is a relational connection, which I think is, if you were trying to unpack the word love, that's really what that word love is. It's a relational connection, right? First, God loves us, and then we love him back. So I think it's more about that than it is just an intellectual assent. It's a participatory knowledge. Everybody knows there's a lot of things you can do to reduce your monthly cost and improve your finances, but who's got the time to go through all of that and figure it out and decide kind of what to trim? Well, that's what I want to tell you about our partner here, Rocket Money. With Rocket Money, crunching the numbers for you, leveling up your money game is an easier way to get this done and save lots of money. One of the things I noticed when I downloaded the Rocket Money app is that I was paying for the same subscription 3 or 4 times on some of these. So what Rocket Money is, it's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending. It helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. And so one of the things that you can do with the app is you can see all your subscriptions in one place. And if you see something you don't want, well, Rocket Money can help you cancel it. Rocket Money's dashboard, by the way, it helps you keep track of all your spending, alerts you if any of your bills increase in price. I just had one notification today that one of my bills went up, and so Rocket Money lets me know that. Also, if there's a large expenditure, which we had to order a bunch of stuff for the kids' school, so that was a pretty big spend on online, and that popped up on my phone as well. Rocket Money can even try to negotiate lower bills for you. They deal with the customer service team so you don't have to. So here's the deal. Rocket Money's 5 million members have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, with members saving up to $740 a year when they use all the app's premium features. So you can cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/unashamed today. That's rocketmoney.com/unashamed. rocketmoney.com/unashamed.
Yeah, and you could say even, Zach, at a lesser level of what faith is. I was reading a book on this last trip I was on about the founding fathers, and every time I read what they did in the beginning place in the birth of our nation. I mean, I believe in our ideals of America. Yeah. I do. I mean, I believe them deeply. It motivates how I act. It motivates my citizenship. It motivates everything because it's an ideal that I aspire to, and that so I'm believing in it at a different level than just saying, I believe that I like a fruit or something like that. I mean, it is something that is inspirational and aspirational at the same time, and I think that's the idea you get when you think about God.
Well, here's what I found fascinating. So I continued with the text. I said, because God in His nature has this multiplicity, I guess, but one, it defines what love is. It must be shared. It is, you can't do it alone. And I threw in Genesis 2:18 where it's like, it's not good for Adam to be alone,
right.
And he created Eve. And so, and I kind of put in there, I know this is deep, but if you go back to what we read in John and you'll see the whole point here. And so but I didn't get into the weeds of John, and I pointed out Galatians 5:22. The first of the fruit of the Spirit is love, and I said even 1 Corinthians 13. I mean, read that. Of course, this is new Christian. He hadn't read 1 Corinthians 13, but I thought his response. Here's a guy been in about 3 months, so that's what I gave him. Those. Basically, 1 John 4:7. And I was like, 1 John 4:7 says the exact thing 1 John 5:1 says, and He is love. Think bigger is what I was telling him.
Yeah.
So listen to what he put. He said, I read everything last night. This is the next night. 1 John 4:8 and 1 John 4:16 together says God is love. Therefore, if you don't love, you don't know God. But if you do love, you do know God because He is love. He's basically preaching a sermon that is right. I could tell he was excited. I see what you're saying about 1 John 4:7 and 1 John 5:1. It says the exact same thing. This is what caught my attention, and the reason I'm bringing this up. He said, also, if you notice that in John 13:34, well, we're in John 13, and I didn't bring that up.
Yeah.
He says, a new command I give you, that you should love, what does it say? John 13:34, exactly. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. I'm telling you, that excited me. Because I didn't even think about that in the moment, but I thought, he went back to washing the disciples' feet. Now, who's teaching who here? He asked me a question, what does it mean? And now he's applying to the picture of Jesus that he saw. I mean, isn't that something that he went to John 13? But look, he doesn't stop there. Also notice that John 3:16 mirrors 1 John 4 and verse 10, where it says that he so loved us and sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Well, that does mirror John 3:16.
Right.
And that's something. But I thought he's going back to John. Then he says, also, he brings this out in John 15:9 and 10, 12 and 13, and 15:17, says similar things as well. So then he ends this with a question. Would you say that 1 Corinthians 13, because I threw that in to read it, is saying that without love we are nothing? Because love is God. And so without God, we're actually nothing.
That's pretty good.
I thought, Now we're going places in the kingdom. But my whole point of bringing that up is we need to keep that thrill of an 18-year-old who's been in 3 months, who discovered why God came down here.
Yeah.
He got it.
Yeah.
And what's he going to do? I'm telling you what he's going to do. He's going to start loving people.
Yep.
I mean, it was just fascinating to me, where I'm thinking, this guy don't know anything. 1 John 5:1, it's not that hard to figure out. And the next thing you know, he reads a couple of verses, and it actually was just thrilling to me. And it shows you the power of God and the power of God's Spirit in a person who's young, who's reading this for the first time and is thrilled about it.
Which is why go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say, you gotta really explain some of these terms that are in the Bible, because people will use them and they don't have any meaning to them. Like the word love is one of the most important things. It is the most important word to define. And that word, as you have illustrated here, is defined by who God is, because in order for God to be love, that must be shared, to your point. There must be a lover, there must be a beloved, and then the spirit between them is actual love too. And that, like, if you think about that, because I hear people all the time say, like, love, there's these people in our town that hold up signs that say love. And what they really mean when they hold these signs up is they're kind of protesting, and they're saying, accept everything. Like, there is, like, just love everything except for those who disagree with them, right? But it's like when you paint love as just this idea that's floating around in the ethos, you really haven't defined anything. All you've done is you've taken a word, a biblical word, and you've used it to try to attach some kind of context to it. But actually, if you think about it, it has no meaning. There is no such thing as love without a lover and without a beloved, period. There is no love. There has to be, like someone says, it's all about love. Well, but does that love you back? You know,
Yeah.
Does that God love you back? I mean, that it's not the words like God and love. They're not just floating around with no texture or context to them. They actually have a real tangible meaning behind them. Yeah. And when it comes to God, it is a relational context.
Well, and I would add to that, it is something that God chose before the beginning of time for humans to show, to do. That's why I made the point about holiness, because look, to put in context, this young man is 18. When I first met him 3 months ago, well, he was, his story, I said, what's your story? And he's like, well, I'm at a crossroads. My buddies want me to join a gang, but there's something in me that I thought, where's this going to lead? And he said, I'm familiar with y'all, and I just thought, I need to at least listen to what they have to offer, and with the Lord. So here's a guy, 18, no father figure in his life. His buddies are wanting him to join a gang in South Texas. Well, where's that going to go? And now 3 months later, here's a new creation, and we're having a conversation about what love looks like in your life, which is the exact opposite of what was fixed to happen. You're going to see a lot of hate, destruction, violence, all of these types of things. And I think somehow we've missed this. It's not just keeping him from that. It's look at what God is doing in his life. I mean, this guy's going to be a lover of people, and God's going to use him to bring other people, not only to live forever, but just make this world look like God's love is winning.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, it's powerful.
So I wanted to advance this text because you've definitely hit the point here, Jase. Out of the question he asked in verse 12 of 13, do you understand what I've done for you? He says this to them. Now, you think about it in context of what we've been talking about with the idea of love. Why, in other words, why Jesus did this. He tells them in verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. In other words, you're calling me these things because that's what I am. I'm your leader. I'm your teacher. I'm your Lord. He's done the miracles. They follow him. But he says, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also shall wash one another's feet. So in other words, what he's saying is, the reason you respect me and love me shouldn't be because of what I've done and who I am, but because of what I'm showing you I am. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent me. So he's back to that same theme again about being from the Father.
We've been on a little health kick the last, I guess, almost a year now. How you
about
feeling?
7 months. I've never felt better, Zach.
The importance of gut health. I didn't realize how important it was to just our overall well-being. And I want to tell you about one of our new sponsors of the product that I'm taking. I think you got it on the counter there right in front of you, Jase. It's called Kimchi One from Brightcore. Kimchi One delivers all the powerful fermented nutrition of kimchi, but in an easy-to-take capsule, giving your gut over 900 unique probiotic strains to help support healthy digestion and also just general overall health. All health begins in the gut, and when you give your body the right fermented superfood, you can support your immune system, you can improve your digestive health, you can even boost your appearance of your skin, your nails, your hair. Kimchi, it's also been shown to help reduce the risk of obesity and support a slimmer waistline. Kimchi One is an all-natural, non-GMO, made right here in the U.S. of A. It's crafted by Brightcore Nutrition, a company committed to health, integrity, and the values that you share. I take this every morning. I've been taking it for, I guess, about a month and a half, 2 months now. It's part of my daily routine. Today, you can take advantage of an exclusive offer. You get 25% off with code Unashamed when you visit mybrightcore.com/unashamed. Or you can call my friends at Brightcore at 888-404-9677 for up to 50% off plus free shipping. You definitely want to call these guys because their knowledgeable team will help you decide if Kimchi One is right for you. That's 888-404-9677 or visit mybrightcore.com/unashamed.
And this is all in response of, do you understand what I have done for you?
Exactly.
He's explaining it.
Then he says, not that you know these things, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So it's this quid pro quo. In other words, if you want to lead people, you have to love people. If you want to set an example for people, you have to serve people. I mean, he keeps going back to those same themes. Now, listen to this, the next thing he says, because I want to get into this before we end this podcast. Too. In verse 18, he says, I'm not referring to all of you. Now, he's giving a little preview of what's about to happen for the rest of this chapter. So he's talking about Judas, this is the hint here. But this is to fulfill the scripture, and this is from Psalm 41. He who shares my bread has lifted up his heel against me.
Yeah. Which is Psalm 41:9. Of course, he said, I know those I have chosen. I'm not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen. But what I find fascinating is he washed Judas's feet also.
Correct.
And when you go to Psalm 41, what's fascinating is you see the previous text. I'm going to say this slowly because this is kind of crazy what I'm fixing to say. He does refer to Judas in Psalm 41:9, and he quotes it here.
Yep.
What I found fascinating is the first 14 verses of John is really described in Psalm 40.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Yep.
Now, I call it a random, because I read Psalm 41, which I'm sure you did.
Right.
And you want to read where he says that?
Yeah, verse 9. And several times throughout the text, by the way, in Psalm 41, are a lot of positives about the Lord. You know, blessed is he has regard for the weak. He helps people in times of trouble. He protects. And then he gets down to verse 9. He says, even my close friend, whom I trusted, he who shared my bread has lifted up his heel against me. So this is David psalm, but he's obviously now that's a prophetic message for what Judas is going to do against Jesus.
Well, and now look, this goes back, when you see that word heel, this takes you back to Genesis 3:15
exactly.
And the fall of man.
Exactly.
And the evil one, which he's fixing to say at that moment that when it's such a I think, a kind of an intimate, almost funny, in a way, scene, because when he says, when they're reclining at the table, because when he makes that announcement, he says, I am telling you, in verse 19, before it happens, so that when it does happen, you'll believe that I am. He's actually not in the Greek. It just says, I am.
Yeah.
So, which is another practical I am reference.
Right.
He says, I tell you the truth, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. So after he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, I tell you the truth, one of you is going to betray me. So that's where this is headed with Judas. Well, this is the funny part. His disciples stared at one another at a loss to know which of them he meant. So just picture this scene, and they're like, say what? Because I think we read this so much, we think, oh, well, they all knew. No, they didn't know.
Yeah.
And he makes an announcement like that. Think how close they have become. And they're with the creator of the universe here, even though they didn't understand all what that meant. So then this happens. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, which is referring to John, everyone thinks, was reclining next to him. Well, Simon Peter starts doing charades over here.
Because he's across the table and he can't talk to Jesus.
He motioned to this disciple, so he starts making some kind of gestures, like, hey, like pointing his finger.
Yeah, like,
find out.
Yeah.
Who, because, you seem to be all his favorite. Mm-hmm. And so ask him which one he means. So whatever the sign language he was doing, that's what he wanted to ask. Well, leaning back against Jesus, so now he's kind of like, let me do this, work my magic here. He asked him, Lord, who is it? So he just kind of cut to the chase. Jesus answered, it is the one to whom I will give the piece of bread when I have dipped in the dish. Then dip in the piece of, did I say fish or dish?
Dish.
I have dipped it in the dish. Yeah. Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, son of Simon. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered him. Well, and I think that's why he quoted Psalm 41:9, because he said, the one
who I share my bread with.
Yeah, he has lifted up his heel against me. When you go back to Genesis 3:15, one of the curses that he puts on the evil one for his role in this suggestion and the lie of saying, did God really say that if you eat of that tree, which led to Eve eating the fruit?
And he reframes it, Jase, as humanity. He says, you will strike his heel and he will crush your head.
That's Genesis 3:15, which
Correct.
is why we always reference that as the beginning of the revelation of the plan
Exactly.
of God becoming a
It's
human.
the first glimpse we see, by the way, to your point, of the love of God post-fall.
Yeah.
Is in this verse.
Which, by the way, answers a lot of questions that have gone awfully wrong about women. I mean, think of that verse in 1 Timothy 2, which is probably one of the most controversial verses about, a woman should learn in quietness and full submission. He goes through that.
Yeah.
But it says, he makes a reference to verse 14 when he says, and Adam was not, Eve was the one who sinned, and Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with propriety. But he's making an analogy that goes back there,
right,
because he said, through this woman's seed, salvation will come. You don't want to underestimate the power of childbirth, not only one that produced Jesus, but also even in our culture. I mean, you take a Christian man and his wife, and they produce what? Children, which are literally coming forth from a woman.
Yeah.
And you literally can change the world in making disciples through a natural birth, and then training them in the Lord. And,
Well, think about Paul's statement in Galatians 4. He said, at this time was set fully, this man born of a woman. I mean, he even brought it up in that context.
Oh, it infuriates me on all the doctrines that come from that. And look, I don't want to chase that rabbit hole, but I'm saying I think we minimize the power of a mom.
Yeah.
In producing a child, and that love that happens there, and even with their husband, that love that happens. Well, when you throw in all in the name of Jesus, I mean, think Ephesians 5. He gives that whole analogy of family and all, and then at the end, he's like, this is great, but I'm talking about Christ in the church and this marriage that we have that produces godly offspring. You know, when someone is born again, think going back to 1 John 5. I think it's an analogy that should be made. I really wanted to read that Psalm 40.
So
Can we do that next time?
We're going to do it next time because there's also another heel story that Zach and I did for our Hillsdale podcast in Genesis 25 and 28 that's very relevant to this as well. So we got a lot more to talk about.
We'll read Psalm 40 before we come back. I know that was in Psalm 41.
Yeah.
But if you read Psalm 40, you're going to see a combination of God's will and love, just like we've been talking about for the last two podcasts.
We'll pick it up there next time on Unashamed. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube. And be sure to click the little bell and choose all notifications to watch every episode.